Hi everyone, I'm Ben, welcome back to my channel. I had a really fun time creating my Women's Prize prediction video, and so I thought why not apply my complete lack of knowledge to also predicting the International Booker Prize. The long list comes out on the 14th of March and will contain 13 books, and so that's 13 more chances for me to be completely wrong. To be eligible for the prize, a book must be a work of translated fiction released in the UK for the first time by a UK-based publisher between the 1st of May 2022 and the 30th of April 2023. Retranslations aren't permitted, so as an example, the upcoming new translation of The Brothers Karamazov would not be eligible for the International Booker. The requirement to be a UK-based publisher also limits some of the books that can be submitted. There are some publishers operating outside of the UK but still publishing works in English in the UK, and a notable victim of that requirement is something like Solenoid by Mircea Cartarescu, which isn't eligible this year. The judging panel this year is headed up by Leila Slimani, author of Lullaby and Adele, and includes Tan Tuan Eng, who's been Booker nominated for his novel The Garden of Evening Mists, and it also includes a few other people like the literary editor of the Financial Times. There are interviews with each of the judges on the Booker website, and one of the questions they're asked is what's their favourite book that's ever been nominated for the International Booker. The answers are pretty interesting actually. So they include At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop, which I loved, The Discomfort of Evening, which I did not love, and The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk. And what that kind of tells me is that there are going to be potential advocates for big books on the panel, and there are going to be judges open to gruesome or challenging content. They are also asked what they are looking for, and some of the things that emerged were sort of emotional resonance, interesting or surprising form that sort of pushes the envelope, as well as one judge who says he's looking for something innovative in the way the translators work, because they are, at the end of the day, writers as well. I've got 13 books that I'm going to predict will be on the list. I can't promise that all of these will be eligible and that I won't make a boo-boo, but there is a Goodreads list of eligible books that I've used just to sense check the ones that I'm picking. However, I don't trust it completely, because included on that list is This World and All That It Holds by Alexander Hemon, which was written in English. So that's definitely not going to be making an appearance on the International Booker long list. I've split these books by geography, which maybe suggests that the judges care about getting an even split from different places around the world, which is not entirely true. But, you know, I like structure, so it's what I did. I'm going to work through these geographies alphabetically, and so the first is Africa. I've got two African books that I think will be in contention. The first of these is So Distant from My Life by Monique Ilbudo. Ilbudo is a writer from Burkina Faso, and this one's published by Tilted Axis Press, who, you might remember, had 3 books on the long list last year, so it seems like they know what they're doing. This is a book about a man who is fascinated by migration, and so takes a perilous journey across many countries to follow his obsession. It delves into the absurdity of some of the bureaucracy around migration and interrogates some of the reasons people might choose to leave their homes. Migration and displacement is a really important topic in our modern world and is only going to get more important as we wrestle with the results of climate change. So this sounds like a really interesting book that is probably going to generate some really good discussion amongst the judges. The second African book that I'm predicting is called Twilight of Torment Melancholy by Leonora Miano. Miano is an author from Cameroon, and this is a story told in 4 parts from the perspectives of 4 different women talking to the same man, and they all have different relationships to this man. It addresses sexuality, blackness, Africanness, and how those two things can butt up against each other. And I wonder if that might tickle what the judges are looking for in terms of lyricism and formal inventiveness. My second location is the Americas, and I've got another 2 books to tell you about from there. The first of these is Stillborn by a Mexican author, Guadalupe Nettle. This is published by another publisher who had 3 books on the long list last year, Fitzcarraldo Editions. And this book is about 2 women who are wrestling with the idea of motherhood and not building their lives and their futures around having children. And then they go on slightly different paths. One gets sterilised and one decides that she does want to become a mother. I've heard really good things about this, and I am really intrigued to give it a go if it does make it onto the long list. The second book is a Colombian one, and it's Retrospective by Juan Gabriel Vásquez. This sounds like a really interesting, expansive, ambitious novel that's kind of a non-fiction novel because it's based on the real life of the Colombian film director Sergio Cabrera, and it sort of positions itself in 2016 when there's a retrospective of his work. But it comes just at a time when his marriage is falling apart and his father's just died. But it sounds like it covers his entire life, and it just sounds really interesting. I actually heard of and read Vásquez for the first time not that long ago. I read his novel The Sound of Things Falling because ChatGPT told me I should. And I really enjoyed it, actually. It was very introspective and dense and a lot of ideas packed into it. And Vásquez is clearly a very talented author. So I would not be surprised to see this one make the list. So then we move on to Asia, and I've got another two novels that I think could be up for the prize. The first is Chinatown by Thuan, which is a Vietnamese novel also published by Tilted Axis Press. This is about a Vietnamese immigrant living and working in Paris, and her sitting on a train that has been stopped because of some unattended baggage. And while she's held up, she reflects on her life and the effects of various wars on her, of her past loves, of her status as an immigrant. And there's also apparently some novel within a novel aspect to the book, which all sounds really interesting. I have picked this one up and flicked through it in my local indie bookshop, and it does have the thing that I dread, which is like walls of text. But I have heard that it's very, very good and intoxicating, so I'm not completely put off, but we will see if it makes the cut. The second Asian book that I think might make the list is Diary of a Void by Emi Yagi. This is from Japan and it's already pretty popular among readers, so you may have heard of it, may know what it's about, but essentially it's a woman who fakes a pregnancy. It's supposed to be strange but also really funny and says a lot about sort of gender stereotypes and what we expect from women, especially when they're pregnant. This is one I definitely do want to read at some point soon. Okay, now we come to Europe, and historically the International Booker has been very Europe heavy, and I am not going to depart from that at all. I'm predicting 7 books from my list are going to come from Europe. I've also mentioned a few of the indie presses that have been quite successful in recent years. So last year, both Tilted Axis Press and Fitzcarraldo Editions had 3 books each on the long list. I think this year is Lolly Edition's year, and I'm predicting 3 books from that publisher are going to make the long list. The first of these is Strega by Swedish author Johanna Lycki-Holm. This is set in the alpine town of Strega, where 9 girls go to work in the Olympic Hotel, and then one of them goes missing. And then there are lots of gothic horror vibes as they try and figure out what's going on. This sounds great, right up my street. I'll be very pleased to read it, and I will probably read it even if it doesn't make the long list. Next is Memorial 29th of June by Danish author Tina Hoag. This is about a woman going to the memorial service of a friend who died 10 years ago. It seems quite formally interesting. Some of it's told in verse, some of it's told in sort of transcribed text messages. And it has this interesting love triangle dynamic, which you are trying to unpick as you work through the novel, which I think might be told not entirely in chronological order. I don't know if I'm completely vibing with this one, but it seems pretty well received by readers. The third book is another Danish author, Amelie Smith, and her novel Threadripper. So this is about a woman in her 30s who's an artist, and she takes a commission to weave a digital tapestry, whatever that means. What sounds really interesting about this book, though, is that it seems to be 2 stories told on either side of the book, and they're kind of intertwined, which sounds like a really cool innovation in storytelling. I'm not sure if it will require innovative translation work, but I guess it might pose some challenges if there's like certain things that need to happen at the same time. You need to use the right amount of words when you're translating from Danish to English. Very intrigued by this one. If nothing else, I think it will generate a lot of interesting discussion between the judges, which can sometimes be much better than everyone just agreeing that something's quite good. Okay, breathe. We're through the Lolly Edition section, but we are not through with the Europe section. And my next pick was a bit of a toss-up between 2 books, because I'm aware that there are a couple of titles this year that are using the second person to tell a story about the experience of a cancer diagnosis. One is Ti Amo by Hannah Østervik from Norway, and the other is Body Kintsugi by Sanna Maric. I have gone for the one that I am most personally interested in, and that is Body Kintsugi. Maric is a Bosnian author, but if you're not aware, kintsugi is the Japanese art of piecing back together broken pottery, and then you fill in the cracks with gold and make them a feature more than a flaw. This is about a woman whose partner leaves her, and then she soon after discovers that she's got breast cancer that she's always feared because it's what her mother had. Apparently this touches on sort of sexuality, learned and inherited shame, which I imagine the cancer is going to be a strong metaphor for. But it's also supposed to be quite an optimistic novel. I guess practicing kintsugi on yourself involves making a feature of your own flaws and the things that you've been through to come out a stronger and more beautiful person. Very intrigued by this, really keen to get to it sometime soon. Next I have The Pachinko Parlour from Elisa Shua-Dusapin. She is a French-Korean author, has previously written Winter in Sokcho. This is about a woman who lives in Switzerland but is visiting her Korean grandparents who live in Japan and run a pachinko parlour. While she's there, she also sort of tutors a young Japanese girl in French. I'm reading this at the moment and it's really interesting. We're essentially getting a view of this woman's relationships to these four very different women in her life. It's very nicely written, very readable, which I know is not always a compliment, but I'm enjoying the reading experience. And I think it's got a lot to say under the hood about sense of place and how that sort of ties into our identity. I think it's great so far, so I'm rooting for it to be on the long list. My next prediction is Time Shelter by the Bulgarian author Georgi Gospodinov. This is a book where the central conceit is about a past clinic where Alzheimer's patients are being treated by their spaces being recreated as moments of history that they can relive. It seems super clever, big brain energy, has a lot to say about how the past impacts the present, and it seems so wide in scope and ambitious that I'm a little bit intimidated by the idea of it, but it sounds really good. My final European pick might be slightly controversial, let's say. This is Identity from Mithu Sanyal, which is a German novel that I think has been nominated or has won some prize in Germany already. It is about a woman who goes to study with this famous academic that she gets quite enamoured with until it is revealed that the academic is pretending to be a woman of colour and is actually a white German. It deals with themes of identity and race and Twitter storms. I think it sounds super intriguing, but it does seem to have a bit of a mixed reaction on Goodreads. Interestingly, I glanced through a few reviews and there were some negative ones, but quite a few of them seem to be written in Polish, so maybe this book has got a terrible Polish translation or something. I have seen this in my local bookshop and it's got a very striking cover, so it has caught my eye, and yeah, just very intrigued by it. That concludes my 13 picks for the International Booker Prize. I'm really interested to know if you've read any of these and what you think of them, or if there are any books that you're expecting to be on the list. I'm aware that I have made a couple of notable omissions, including Mariana Enriquez's Our Share of Night, which could very easily be on the list, but I read a review in The Guardian that basically said it was very overwritten, and that made me doubt whether it's actually got as much literary merit as the International Booker might ask for. Anyway, I've made my bed, I'll lie in it, and if I'm wrong, I'll take it like a big boy. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more of my content, then hit the subscribe button and you'll get something once a week from me. Until next time, toodles!